Hi, and good morning. This is Manuel from Workamajig. I just want to wait for people as they start to attend. Thank you so much for joining while we get started. Today's topic is on traffic and resourcing. So I want to just make sure that you're aware of what the session's about and what we'll cover. I'm going to be sharing my screen in just a moment while we're waiting here. Give everybody about a minute or two to get started. Everybody will be on mute, but feel free to use the other tools in Zoom to communicate with me today. So we have a chat feature and we have a Q&A feature that I will try my best to monitor during the session. And as you may be aware of, we will record this. We are recording this, and we will be sharing that with you on our website as soon as it's rendered. So just be aware of that. All right, let's do one more minute and we'll get started on this here. As we get questions in, I'll do my best to answer them at the most appropriate time. There may be some things that obviously may be off topic that I won't be able to answer if it comes up like that. And as always, you can follow up with your account managers by reaching out to us directly via email at support@workamajig.com. All right, we made it past a minute, so let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, today's topic is on traffic and resourcing. One of the things that well, Workamajig, our team wants to make sure that you're aware of is that we designed the system to be able to reference things that you're setting up so that it can then help you in traffic and resourcing, your teams, your projects, your tasks, your assignments. And so the more that you put into it, the more that you'll get out of it, right? So that's one thing that we would like to preach a lot when you talk to us, speak with us, or you see that in our videos. But that being said, what I like to start to establish that foundation is to make sure that we can see that with how we've designed it, starting with the efficiencies that we've set up from the back end of the system. Now, this is my sandbox, so there may be some messy things in here. But one of the things that I like to make sure that you're aware of is that in the back end, and again, one other thing too, you as users, some may have access to see all the icons that I'm showing, some may not, and so you may want to partner up and reach out to your internal teams administrators that are running the program for you and see what you're missing and what more you need to be able to replicate some of these things or to turn them on. And obviously they can reach out to us if they need help doing so. But in the back end of the system, there's a icon for the admin button that I can reach out to or click on and set up in the system setup lots of things. But on our global list, we do preach the idea of project templates. Now, I have a lot of templates in here, but I've just made one for our webinar today. It is one that has a pretty straightforward cascading feature of tasks. You'll see them here. You'll see them represented graphically on the Gantt chart on the right side. They follow mostly one after the other. The idea here is that we are preaching this option because it's going to make your life easier as you create projects. If you're not using them, this is a great chance to think about it, work with your internal teams to see, how you can take advantage of them. If you're using them, great. Just again, this is a chance for you to think about, how can we revamp them, update them, make them more efficient for us. Sometimes there's that debate of, too many or too few tasks on here and how to break them up. My focus is not on showing you how to build one, but just to give you the idea that we're looking for a certain element or a couple of elements in here that will help us produce and run those traffic and resourcing tools better in the system. One of those, as I've already mentioned, right, is these rows that are the tasks, but the other part are going to be what we call services. Now, our services is another word in our language terminology for labor categories or talent. They're so important, not only just for the traffic and resourcing, but if you're using our other end of the system, which is for finances, that's a big connection of how it connects both sides. But our focus here is just on the traffic and resourcing tool. So these are actually placeholders. They're coming from a backend list that in this case I've set up for me, or you may have similarly on your end. And so I can click on any of these rows and the links on these, and I can see that they're placeholders to say, hey, I'm going to need an account manager, I'm going to need an art director, I'm going to need a copywriter, in this case, a senior copywriter, and I'm allocating time to them. So the more that I do at the template level, the less that I have to either create out of nowhere or adjust if I need to when I get to the projects, obviously, as they are needed to be managed at that point. So that's so important for us here. Otherwise, obviously, like I mentioned, you have a grid of a cascading schedule that is implemented in the template. So we'll use that and we'll, especially my examples here. So just being aware of that. So what we do once we have that set up is that our focus today is really of the resource manager icon here. And it's a folder. And in the second row, you can see 3 selections. So we're going to go through each one and talk about them. So let me go ahead and start off with the staff schedule. Now, this is my sandbox, so there's a lot of things that I've done here over the years. And so in order to kind of clean it up and keep it presentable for you today, I've filtered this a little bit. I'll show you what I've done to it. But basically, our goal is for you to use this to say, okay, this is my team. And this is what I plan for them, the schedule for the next, it defaults to a 2-week schedule when you first open it. It will remember what you've set up the last time if you've played with it and opened it before. But the idea is that we want to have you know, okay, who's available, who's not available, who's been overworked, who isn't being overworked, and how can I adjust or manage what I see here, right? So just being aware of that. What we can do here is a couple of things. One, I have mine to display by day. I can contract the schedule to just do by week. So I can switch between those two by clicking on the right side of the screen between those two tabs. I can also see where I am, right? This little vertical red line tells me, today's the 24th, and this is what's going on in my team's life for that time and for that week. I can also see any unassigned work. And again, this is so important. Hey, we're creating these projects and we may have some that, we haven't filled in any assignments to. So these placeholders allow us to connect that way with them. Now, one other thing that I want to point out too, and so I'll pick on what are these users here. And I think I'm going to pick on Pete here, is that you can set up the connections for the system to realize, okay, what can Pete do? And if you open up your, and what I'm going to do is actually duplicate tabs here. And that's one thing that you can do in Workamajig. By the way, a lot of times I get that question. How can I have multiple windows open in Workamajig like I had before if I use the old system, or just so that I'm more versatile? So you can duplicate tabs within the browser, and then you can leave one and then go to the other. And here I can visit with my employee records. And so we'll have Pete as the example here. So Pete has a lot of things on his profile, but our focus is just to see what he's available to work on. If I go to his area where we have services, this is what he's available to do. He's really involved primarily as an art director, but he can do some design work, and then some other levels in art direction here. And that's what the system is looking at with the staff schedule, is to say, okay, if I want to know, because obviously I could just, you know, think about it and say, okay, I know P can do some of these, but if I don't know, I can ask the staff schedule to help me filter for that information. So under the options, there's a lot of filters in here. Again, I've cleaned it up so where I'm showing things that I prepared for the webinar. So that's a specific project status that I've set up for my I guess staff schedule timelines here. This is related to the projects themselves. But as for the people, or in this case, the services, if I want to see, who can do art direction, right? I know obviously that P can do it, but if I didn't know, I can select it and I can click save again. And what will happen here is I'm only going to see art direction. Oh, and look, two other people can also do it. And I can then filter for those users. So that's the nice thing about the staff schedule, is that you have those filter options. Now, what do I do once I have that? Well, you have a couple of different options. You can go ahead and click on the row itself, so that, and then specifically in the number two there, and see what it is. Oh, okay, I have, these 2 hours that are not assigned. If I wanted to view it from here, that's great. There's a lot of information that I could display, especially if there were a lot more detail. I could organize the information by the type. In this case, this also references things like time entries or meetings or any other types of categories that the Workamajig is holding for you. If I wanted to see it by project, for multiple projects, you have different options here to see it. But once you've just selected your display, you can also just click on the row, so you can see that, oh, there's also other assignments in here that you have assigned. Again, in your creating your projects, maybe you're using that template that I mentioned in the beginning, but you haven't assigned people to them within that schedule, within that project screen. This is a way to see that and to say, okay, these are the ones that I missed. I've created all these new projects, haven't made the official assignments. I wanted to know who's available. I can see that detail here, and I can edit information by adding the people's names on these rows. That's going row by row, right? Or if I had multiple lines, I could do a mass update where I could do reassignments from here and then pick from a drop down and pick someone. So that's my list of group of people that I have in my sandbox. But what I like to show off really is within this view, we have this blue icon that allows me to click on it and see what makes up obviously the entire row of not only that two, but also the other details that show up based on my time start and date of this screen. So I could see there's actually two things, right? The one that's technically just for tomorrow, the 2 hours, and then the 20 hours that are yet to be filled for the rest of the time period. Once I know which one I want to choose, I can click on it and drag it over, and I could pick either Pete or maybe Peggy, who's free, and I can then assign those 2 hours to Peggy like that. Okay, so that's really the workflow that we want you to follow once you've made your templates, once you prepped your individuals to be linked to those talents in their profiles. And obviously, as you're working those assignments, we always get that question, well, from the project perspective, I don't know who's available. The step schedule brings it all together. We're trying to keep these screens clean for you, have enough space for you to see that information. Obviously, different users have different screen sizes and resolutions. So we really like the ability to have the step schedule, something that you can have open in a tab while you're working on the rest of Workamajig. So that way you can make these assignments and see it live. You can always either refresh the page altogether or click the search feature to get the latest update on the information. Otherwise, the system will just generate an update every 15 minutes or so. Okay. So I'm hoping that makes sense, that you're able to take advantage of it. Just making sure that I haven't missed any questions yet, which is good. So that's the idea. Obviously, within this tool, you can select some presets. Hey, I want to go back in time. Why would you want to go back in time? Maybe there's time entries that you want to look for. Obviously, my team here hasn't entered time because it's my sandbox, but I can remove the start direction and see if maybe somebody has entered time in the past 2 weeks. I guess not, but that's what this would also give you a chance to see the detail of what time entries have happened in the past. Okay. Oh, good. We're getting some good questions here. Just want to make sure I'm testing it, see if I'm live here. So Sean's asking, are all the days that the hours sit and keyed off of the due date? They are. So it's really about planning your schedule. When you look at, and I'm going to go ahead and maybe look at one of these examples that I have on screen. So give me a second to show this off. When I look at one of my projects, and again, one of the ones that I prepped for this webinar here, so pick this one, your schedule, right? This grid here is saying, look, when you create these assignments, it's relying primarily on 3 instructions from this grid. From this one is actually the project start date. That's actually one that's technically not in this grid. When you create the project or you're administering the project settings, what is your anchor date when the dates will follow from? So mine was created for the 24th being today. So they start off today so we could show the future. Then it says, okay, you have your tasks cascading, right, following each other. We have these days column here. That's the duration of the number of days that the tasks are following. And then you have these column called the predecessor or dependency that says, okay, well, row 3 here relies on row 2 above. Each of these are numbered with the line number, and it's just making reference of that. What happens is that using that instruction, you're actually going to get a plan start and plan complete. And these 2 columns are represented graphically, visually by the Gantt chart, right? To show, hey, taking into account the instructions of the start date and the duration and the dependencies, where do they fall? And then these then feed into the staff schedule to say, okay, based on what I've built in here from the rows of the tasks, I can go back and look at those assignments and see, okay, well, if it's going to be more than 1 day or within a day, how do the system's going to evenly split the hours so that they appear on your staff schedule as such. So I'm hoping that made sense. It's something that obviously we want you to start to use if you haven't used it, to look at how it reflects it. And then just another reminder for you that when you are using our system, we asked you that you go through training, and we tried to help you set up your system the way you were going to use it. But by default, it's set up to do the tasks as soon as they can get done. And if they're not getting done, to move the dates forward until the system starts to recognize that someone's starting to work on those tasks by either entering time or changing, indicating by percentage change. That way, the system continues to update that information and feeds into the staff schedule. Okay. All right, Sean, looks like you have another question here. It says, what happens when you have an estimated hours and days? And let's see, what's your example? You expect the task to take 10 hours, but it has 5 days to complete those 10 hours. So what it does is that it does it 2 hours per day. That's exactly right. So when you're thinking about it that way, the system can't read minds. It has to guess at its best, okay, what those 2 hours are. But what's going to happen is that as the end user is entering time against those tasks, obviously it's going to start telling you, okay, well, if you started with 10 hours and he's done 2 hours, he's got 8 hours left. It's going to recalculate based on the number of days left on that task, the schedule based on the plan, so that it tells them, okay, hey, you start to think about the fact that maybe you're starting to run out of time, or your hours are starting to clump up, which is nice, because what's the other thing you're seeing here on my screen is that the system is starting to flag these boxes, anything in red. And I can actually control that. I can actually go into the options section of the step schedule to let me know, hey, if anything's over 8 hours on a day grid or 40 hours on a week grid, go ahead and turn red for me. That way, as a manager, I'm obviously observing and monitoring the staff schedule. I can see, hey, what happened? Oh, he didn't do anything yesterday, so the hours are starting to clump up. Hey, what's going on? Oh, I didn't do it yesterday. Okay, well, you know, what do we need to do, right? What is the adjustment? Are we getting the feedback from the system? Just because again, it's saying that's what we expected. In this case, my name's the one in red, Manuel, to do. Do you need more time, or is there understanding that you're going to get the remaining 8 hours, and in the next 2 days you can obviously, we'll see that when you enter time for that day, today or tomorrow, and it'll adjust, but now at least I'm aware of it, right? I'm keeping track of that information. So that's how the system is going to read it, spreading it out that way. That's a good question, but it's also good that you asked it, because we've had these sessions before, these webinars, and we've shown a lot of the standards. So just be aware that you can revisit other webinars to kind of glean some information that maybe that I'm not going to cover, or that don't get a chance to cover. But one of the things that I've noticed, that we're adding new things to the system. And so in the example of Pete, if I can see these 6 hours, I think they're linked to a couple of different projects, right? But maybe I want to assign one of these to be sort of in the back end, or the back half of his 2-week period. So what we actually have is the ability to look at the assignments that are bigger or longer than a week. So that's just what's available now. And what I'll do here is I'll pick on this project, but I'm going to actually look at, because I think in that project, he has a couple of things in the back end. So he's got one thing happening today, and then the rest of the week, or the next week, he's got something else going on. So in the system, I can actually edit Pete's assignment, right? And I can actually work on trying to make it so that I can allocate that full 20 hours. That's really what's being divided 20 into those days. And it's called, in this side, show assignment buckets. You also will see it when you're actually in the schedule of the project, show weeks. But this is going to allow me to say, as long as I have something more than a week period, I can actually go into those 20 hours and split them up and say, okay, well, I want to actually give you either more time at the beginning or more time at the end. And I can do, so I know this is a total of 18 hours here. So maybe I do 6, and then I do 12. So I'm forcing that in here. Now, this is, again, something not technically new that we've been offering, but something that we address as we hear our clients kind of worry about how you're spreading out your time. Again, this can only happen outside of a week. So within a week, I can't do just something that I can assign Tuesday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. But if it's crossing multiple weeks, I can make those allocations that way. So that way I can help him adjust those buckets manually. And you'll also see that the system is picking up those changes. And you may want to, again, when you are taking this back to your teams, tell them, hey, we had Workamajig offers this new feature. We didn't know, but that we had it. Can we try it out? Because obviously it'll surprise them, right? If someone is actually watching the staff schedule again and say, how come things are not moving like I thought? Oh, it's because someone made these changes and I need to see them, right? I need to be aware of them. And what will happen is that in that case, by making those changes, and I just got to refresh my staff schedule here, we're going to be able to see that the time has changed. And I think actually I've made the change for the 3rd week. So I may have to expand my week a little more here for Pete. Here, let me go one more week. But that's the goal, is that the system is going to recognize those allotments. I wonder if maybe I didn't save my change for you to show some buckets here. Yeah, I don't think I saved it. I just played with it. I didn't actually make the change for you to use it. So let me make sure I'm saving it here. There we go. And then I'll make sure that I refresh my screen. Let's see if we can see those effects. So see, my time has now been redistributed, starting obviously with the 1st week. He's got obviously more happening for him. So I can go ahead and expand my view and make those changes. So those are things that we want to introduce you to think about. Again, if you want to ask more questions about it, we ask that you direct those to your account manager and work with your internal team to implement those so that obviously we can move forward with today's session. But great question. It actually allowed me to introduce that a little earlier than I wanted to, which is great. But that way I didn't forget. And then Kelly has a question: when people enter time to a task, it does take away from their allocated hours. So another thing that we want you to be aware of is that we expect a lot of information. So my example here, obviously it's cleaner so that we can see the information. So it's not like I'm pulling you in all different places or corners of the system. But what will happen is that we have an overnight process so that it starts to annotate the hours and make the effects of, okay, well, you started out with 10, now you're down to 8. But at least at that moment, or at the present time, or live, right, when you're looking at the step schedule, it will start to at least record that you have hours entered for that day. So that your team knows, okay, yeah, you're entering time, and obviously this is our plan. We're seeing you working, and so that'll take away from the remaining hours in those allocations for your assignments. So yes, Kelly, that's correct. It will do that, and again, that's something that we want you to start to take a look at with your team. If you haven't used a staff schedule before, I can try to, let me see what my 9 hours are here for. I can do one for kickoff meeting. I need to see which assignments I had, and I can start entering time. Now, this is not, this is my quick way of entering time for the staff schedule, actually, so that I do it the right way. I'm actually gonna do it the right way. I'm gonna go as a creative. So I'm gonna go over to my Today Creative page to where I can enter time. And I'm actually gonna look for my webinar. And here we go. We have some tasks that are here for the webinar. And here's my 2 hours. So I can start to enter time here. So I can do a new time entry. This is for webinar 1, and I'll do my 2 hours, or actually I'll do 1 hour, and I'll save it. I won't finish the task because I want to show that difference. So that's 1 hour there. And then I'm actually going to look at my second task for a different project. This one, I will enter the 2 hours, and I will also mark the task complete, um, just to show you how I'm doing all that. So I've entered time this way. And then again, I can go back to the staff schedule. I'll refresh my screen so it starts to take effect at all that. And we should see some changes on the step schedule for myself. Here, we'll wait for a second as it loads on my end. Let me see here as we're waiting for that. I want to look at our questions here. So let me pull that over, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you'll see right here, you see the time entries. And again, so it's going to tell you the time entries that are live. And at the same time, it's going to say, okay, well, if I have, if I wait for that overnight process, then I'm going to look at what I have tomorrow, right? What I have left over. But at least for now, I can see the time entries now. So that's where it's hard to show you, obviously, what will happen or how it will reflect tomorrow, but it'll start to take away from the remaining hours allocated. Okay, so great question. Let's see here. I know that I have a question on the chat also. Let's see, is there a way to see the task visually, like on the right side here, when you're looking at the full staff schedule? I'm not sure if I understood, Jessica. Do you mean the squares or the blocks that I had shown initially when I had clicked on this? The colored bars we're seeing. Oh, the Gantt chart, you mean, from the projects. So if I go back to my project, yeah, I was on the project page. So we're actually going to get to that. There is a way to see your task that way. It's a great question. I'm going to put a pin on that because we're actually going to show you, it's one of the other icons besides the step schedule. Right now, we're showing you the prioritization of the staff themselves, right? But we'll show you for sure. Let's see. So We are recording this question for Brohan. So if you missed the first half, we will be presenting that information in our video that we post after the call is done on our website. So just look out for that. I won't be able to answer any specific questions, unfortunately. So we ask that you direct those to your account manager. But let me see if I read your question thoroughly and see what I can at least answer from a general perspective. So your asked question is, what is the best way to approach assigning 10 to 15 projects to 25 users live in a resourcing meeting? So yeah, that's something that we just went over a little bit, the ability to filter within the staff schedule, to filter for those 10 to 15 projects, connect with your users setup and make those connections on the staff schedule. So yes, you're right. We did start to talk about that at the beginning of the session. If Lynn, looks like you're reporting an issue with hours on dashboards. I'm not sure which dashboard that would be, and I don't think I would be able to answer that in our session today. So I would ask that you follow up with your account manager, reaching out directly at support@workamajig.com. Sorry about that. But yeah, we'll try to keep our session moving here. Isabel asked a question about the percentage of time used on the schedule. So maybe it's on my end that you were referencing, Isabel. So what we have here is these columns that are available to you: totals, percentage utilization, remaining. Um, I can only guess that either maybe, again, it may be an adjustment from a setting perspective. That would be tough to, again, answer right on this call why your view is different. But just know that your team, your admin team, can either look at options to either show, and I'm going to try to hide my Q&As here that are in front of me, filter options here. But as to columns within the staff schedule, I'm not sure if there's something that would cause yours to not show that column, but I would ask you again to reach out directly to our support team, email them a screenshot so they can maybe take a look and see what setting you're missing. But good questions overall, for sure. I'm just sorry that I couldn't answer them on there. On the project schedule. Okay, I did. If I scroll down enough, I guess I should have seen that. So yeah, so for project schedules, let me go to one of these projects that I had open. One other thing, and this is a great question actually from Isabel, because this is something that we want our users to be aware of when it comes to grids or screens. There will be an option like the More button, or maybe it directly says System Settings. This one actually has a drop down that has System Settings here. So certain users are allowed to have access to that, and you can work with your team to see who has those. But that will allow you to set up, and this is obviously, I'm pretending to be the super user, right, in my sandbox. You can select which columns will be displayed in what order they'll be displayed on the screen. So it's about, I would have you reach out to your internal team, and they can reach out to us if they need help setting that up, so you can see all those fields. So great question. Be aware that that's something that's going to be throughout the system, and your admin team needs to make a decision of who has access to it, because it's not just one screen will you have access to edit, it's all the screens. Which screens do you have the ability to edit the options and settings? So just be aware of that. And yes, the percentage is updated when users enter time. It's a great question. When users enter time, actually the percentage itself doesn't get updated. It only gets updated when task sees whether the user, if it's just assigned to one person, if the user completed it, it'll show 100%. But if it's, let's say that they entered 2 hours, it will not update the percentage. It's either one or the other for our use, because we have some clients that don't enter time, and so we've left it like a clean break. The only time you'll see the percentage update is when they've completed the task. It'll show 100%, or when they complete their part of their task, then it'll show, I'm looking at the hours that distributed between the three of them, their completion of it, then I'll show, the correct percentage. So great question on that. And Kelly is asking, does it take away their time entered? Yes, it does. I think you had asked that in the other question there, a question screen. So, okay, Rob, it says you can also create custom layouts to switch between columns displayed. Yes, Rob, it looks like you have been looking at our features that are available on the screen, something that unfortunately I can't touch on too much today. But besides setting up those columns the way that I described, there's the ability for your team to select layouts, for you to then switch layout sets. That's just an example of that feature, just because Rob pointed it out. But again, hard for me to cover that today. My focus really is to get you to look at our resourcing tools, but still great questions. So like I said, I'll try my best to recognize those. Okay, so Gina is asking here in the schedule view, what is the number after the initials in the assigned column? So the on the project schedule, just so that you're aware, those numbers are the allocated hours. So our goal, again, for this one is that we would have obviously had you feel good about creating projects. But just to answer your question, yeah, in my case, hey, these are the initials of the people that are assigned, and then in the parentheses are the hours that each of them are allocated. So I could have different people assigned to different hours during the span of that task. So that's the goal with the assignments within the schedule. That's really what's then feeding into the hours of the staff schedule. So great question. And then if you again questions on how to set that up, you can definitely reach out to us for that training. It's available to you. Again, we offer these webinars, but you can always reach out to your managers, account managers here at Workamajig. We'll be happy to answer your questions. And if you need to, we can schedule a call to go over those with you as well. So I know that my clients sometimes are a little shy to ask me for help, but I tell them, hey, don't be shy, reach out. So good questions, everybody. I think I got through all of them, so I feel good to move on. So that's the idea with staff schedules. The other big thing that I also wanted to let you know that it's new, that actually came up from the last session on traffic and resourcing, is that besides the show weeks that I just showed, where you can sort of create these manual buckets of hours to distribute on a week by week basis, you can also look at creating um, limits or max days per user. So as you saw in the options in my staff schedule, I talked about, okay, there's a max number of hours, a max number of weeks, turn red when it crosses that threshold. But if I have someone that doesn't work 8 hours every day, I can actually go into that employee's profile. And I'm actually going to go and pick on Pete again, prepared Pete for this one. As I'm going to go to the back end where the employee lists are. Again, you would have to talk to your team if you're not able to adjust them yourselves to have them make the adjustment. But under Pete, there's an area where I can select what his working hours are. And as you can see, I've selected 2 days where maybe he's here in the office half the time. So I want to use that to tell the staff schedule, hey, let me know when I've assigned too much work for him on Wednesdays and Fridays, because obviously he's not here. So you would do that for him here. So this is a new feature. And then what you would do is in the back end of Workamajig, and again, this would be where maybe your super users can be involved. We have an area where it's called transaction preferences, what makes the system tick. A lot of options in here, but just so that you can tell them, hey, this is where you go if you want to try this out. So you can turn it on and off. But on this section, under the schedule options, there's a box that says use employee minimum hours per day for resourcing. And you can check that box. You'll have to save and you'll have to tell them to refresh their screens to take the full effect, as you've seen me do when other things that I'm applying. But the idea here is that once those take effect, and hopefully it takes effect for me right away, you're going to see that now these turn red for Pete. Hey, on Wednesdays and Fridays, he's only here 4 hours. I need to adjust those days for him. Unfortunately, because I haven't set up all my other users that way, it's going to start flagging me all the zeros that I have. So just be mindful of that. So again, here's something else that our clients have asked for, and we've been able to implement that recently. So just so that you know, you can now partition those flags. Obviously, it's still going to let you schedule. The thing with Workamajig, if you haven't noticed it already, is that we don't stop someone from doing something. We just alert you that they're doing it, right? That's especially true with allocations and time entries. The only thing that I would say that sort of overwrites that rule, which is now my next topic here, is going to be the fact that if you didn't know, we connect, besides your project schedules to the staff schedule, we also connect the calendar to the staff schedule. So I'm going to leave the staff schedule open here. I'm going to travel over to my calendar that you can find under the everyone icon, calendar. And here I'm going to go ahead and create something for tomorrow. We're going to call it, Thursday Fun Day. But the reason that I'm bringing it up, and again, it leads up to a whole other discussion that unfortunately we don't have too much time to cover today, about calendars and how you can get your calendar into Workamajig. There are possibilities for that. Reach out to our team for that, for those questions. But when we implement, when our clients first implement with Workamajig, we recommend that they set up their office closures or holidays, so that in case of something like this, because I want to show it within this week and there's no holidays, at least US ones that are happening on Thursday, I'm going to go ahead and create one here. And I'm going to make sure that I choose that calendar that will recognize the office closures. You have one already in your system, so usually has this name that I'm indicating here. You don't have to, like you would expect with other calendars like Google Exchange, invite a bunch of people to them. The system already knows because it's preset to include them in. I'm just going to make sure that it's a blocked out calendar event. And that's going to appear on my calendar here. It's asking me if I want to email everybody. And that's going to also affect what's on the staff schedule. So let me see if it'll take the effect right away, so that it blocks that time out. And that will also affect the schedules in your project. So there's something assigned for that day, it will push those days, those times forward. It's going to think like it's a Friday, Saturday or Sunday. So it's giving you the ability to allocate for that time and also push those dates forward. So that's an important connection we offer within Workamajig, the use of calendars. Again, can't really drill too deeply into that whole theology of it, but just wanted to introduce you to that idea. A lot of our clients say, well, I don't know how I can resource because there's obviously something else happening besides um, what I'm assigning, which is what's happening on their calendar, and that's a way to do it. So just be aware of that. And you can follow up with our team if you have questions more on that. But let me see what's come up since I've looked at my questions here. Let's see here. Okay, so Jessica is asking, if a resource tells a project manager that they prefer to spend a full day working on one task rather than 4 2-hour tasks, can that be updated the day of? Yeah, they can. It can be updated the day of. It's just a matter of obviously going into those tasks and saying, hey, like I need this task to not be on today, right? So you saw how, and I'm being very brief in my answers. You can definitely talk to our team more about that setup, but you would be just asking in the project schedule, don't consider this task to start on this day, for example, start it on the following day, so that it falls in the days that you want it to be on. So that's the best way that I could answer that question, Jessica. So great question. Margarita says, is there a plan to build in a way to add up hours in the schedule as you are allocating? I'm not sure. It says right now you have to exit and do a pull from schedule in the estimate tab and keep going back and forth. So yeah, so again, we're trying to keep our screens clean. We're trying to not bombard them with too much information. We are asking that you switch between the two tabs to get sort of the update of, okay, what happens when I do something in the project? How does that affect my staff schedule? That's what we have in those scenarios, Margarita. So that's a good question, but unfortunately, yes, it's going to be two tabs to go back and forth. So, and I think your question is actually more about the estimate tab. Um, so again, I'm not getting too much into the estimates in this webinar, so I wouldn't be able to drill too much into it. But I definitely would ask you to reach out to your account manager to talk about your process with them to see what they would recommend. So there you go. Jessica's asking a good question though. Can you link this calendar to a Google calendar? So I do want to talk about that part very briefly, but still talk about it. So by design, Workamajig is open to sync with Gmail or Google Calendar, excuse me, and in Exchange or Outlook calendars. So that's something that you can reach out to your account managers on. Um, I would have you look at our guide. So we have a support guide, by the way. You can always go to it at any time. That's where you can find recordings of our webinars. But if you type in, calendar sync in here, you'll probably get more information that I can describe on how to do so. And then again, I would have you reach out to our account managers because we're making that easier to sync than ever before. And then just as a little tidbit more on that, we ask that you just do a test with one calendar before you have everybody jump into the water to make sure that it's the way that you want it to work. Everybody obviously works differently. So calendars can obviously be their own, mileage may vary, I guess. So good questions from everyone there. All right, just making sure I haven't missed any others. Perfect. So that's what I wanted to cover, the staff schedule. Feel free to use the options feature to filter for things. You saw how, different things affected within here. I want to now go to the next menu item that was under the resource manager tool, which is the traffic calendar. This isn't as complex. I think that staff schedule, we've really worked on that one. We try to give you as much information as you can out of it. The idea with this traffic calendar is to now show it from a different perspective, which is those graphical representations we saw from the project schedule. Hey, can I see that from a bird's eye view of through multiple projects or clients? This is it right here. So if I wanted to focus on tasks that are running for a period of time, in this case, the defaults to the ones that are in progress, that are running through this month. And I can, again, just focus on the ones that I prepare for the webinar so that it's cleaner. So I can select those at least. I don't know if it took it. I don't know if I needed to. There we go. There we go. I can actually go ahead and run a search using the filters that are here. And maybe I picked the wrong one. Let's see. I just created that status, so maybe it's being weird. There we go. So this is that example, right? Somebody had asked about that earlier. So what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, do you want to track your clients, a specific client, the status of their projects, via their projects and tasks, and see that in a grid like you would from a project schedule? Here it is. In those filters, you could have done it by client, by task name, by dates, by users, by team. If you break up your instance by office or department, those would have been filters too. But that's what we offer here for you to go through and set up. And what's nice about these guys is that once you figure out the best display, because you can have multiple, you actually saw, if I go back one, that I've saved others that are there for me. So once I have what I'm looking for, I can publish it. And let me just focus on giving it a name, at least for now. So webinar, what are we in, March webinar. And then I can allow other users to run them. If you didn't know, your instances are intended to have your users be grouped into what we call security groups. These are mine, and that allows me to be able to manage the system easier. Hey, who is allowed to do things in every screen or in every report, or in this case, in the traffic calendar, here they are. So just by saving that information, now I have that listed here. And let's say now I'm in, June, for example. Sure, I should have named this report, right? Because it's technically a report differently, but it'll still look at what's this month. It'll move with you. So you can always run it. And that's nice. So that's something that you're welcome to get into. Just be aware that it's not a dead screen. So one, if you click on the row of the project, it'll give you a chance to update the project information. If you click on the task of it, it'll give you the same details that we saw from the staff schedule to manage that task and its links and details. So that's available to you. The other thing too is that we actually wanted to really use the calendar feature within it. This is a very rough example of the output of what I've shown here, right? These all are technically running at the same time, but these are all my tasks within each of those three projects that I prepared for the webinar today. And I can choose, and that's what you probably saw if you remember those other selections when I was saving the calendar that I didn't talk about. I can go ahead and go into the settings and decide, okay, well, maybe I don't want to include the detailed calendar. So maybe I want to include the project information and I want to just show the end dates so that I can get as much information on here, but make it look nice. So these are the due dates instead, right? So you have the ability to manage how those grids work if you wanted to see them that way. Obviously, this is running for the month, so I may have other tasks that are due in April that I would have to just move to that for that purpose, but I would also have to change my settings here for it. But those same settings are what you're seeing when you look at the saving of the calendar. On top of that, what's nice about the feature here, and again, this is just because it's a cool thing that I always like to show off, is that you can, once saved, you can go to your calendar and you can go and click on display options, and you can actually go and see a list of your published calendars and see them overlapped over yours. So if it's not showing up for you, it's the first time you're doing it, just like the one that I just created, I can go and look for it, select more calendars to view. Again, I clicked on more display options and then here, and it's going to show me different ones. But there's my March one that I just added, and I would select it, and it's going to appear here. I can give it a color so that it shows up. I don't know why it's brown and green, but maybe it's just the setting. But I can go ahead and update that, and now it's, oh, I guess it does. Oh no, sorry, I picked the wrong one. There we go. Here, let's make it green then. There we go. So you can overlap it, available to you. I'm also, by the way, if a lot of people aren't using the calendar, I always go to my display options to make sure that I have a legend turned on so that this right side appears, and then I can start to uncheck things and recheck them if that's what I want to do. So that's something that's available to you. Again, it's just a tease on that new on that added feature is not new, but it's an added feature. So if you want to save some of those or present them to others to see, those are available. So, okay. Let me make sure that, so the question about can you see other people's calendars, that's a little more off topic. The answer is if they allow you to, yes. And I can't get into the details of setting that up, but yes, there's definitely options for your teams to see each other's calendars. So yes, try to keep it short there on that. Okay, so that is pretty straightforward with the traffic calendar, just being aware of that. This other one, the assignment management, this one is actually new, or it's actually been around for a bit. Now, a lot of my clients will say, well, I don't even see it. And how do you turn it on? So I want to talk about that. And that's going to be under the tool for the admin, the system setup. We're going to go over to here, and it's going to be under the rights or security settings. Again, maybe not all of you are the super users, so this is just more of an explanation of how to tell your super users to get here. If you are a super user and you have access to get to this far, great. Again, just a very simple explanation. Your rights are linked to each of the security groups where your people are assigned to. So make sure you're adding it to the right group first. So click and highlight the group first, and then you would go and search for the right. We have a search bar up here, and we will call it the assignment screen. So I believe, yes, it's under the traffic section, and it's called the traffic assignment management screen. So make sure that's on. That's allowing them to see it when they go to the main menu, the resource manager, and the assignment management. What is it? This is what it is. So this is an example. I picked these 5 users here to show because I have a lot of users that don't do anything. And the idea is that you're seeing those assignments on a weekly basis. You can see only 1 week at a time, and you create these columns. This one that's defaulted for you, but the other ones you can create the columns, label them as you want, And what you can do is set this up to be sort of an agile workflow. It's a little different than the cascading workflow that we've established so far with your trainings and the other screens, the traffic and resource. But the idea is the same. Hey, you create a project, it has tasks, obviously it has assignments, and they contain hours. But now I want to be able to track, maybe give them priority, classify them. And why would I do that? This is from my management screen so that when I click on myself, because it's easier to show this, I can see, okay, oh, look, that task that I finished, right, as it gave 2 hours, it's 100%, it's completed. It falls in that category. Where else if I had, this other task for one of the webinars, and I'd say as a manager, hey, Manuel, go ahead and do that today as a priority, and then work on this other one, and then work on, whatever else comes next. What I'm doing from a manager side is I'm communicating this. How do I see it from the creative side? Well, the creatives actually have, let me make sure I go to the right screen. They have under the Today Creative page, the ability to have, by default, this is the card view, but they have the ability to choose out of these 3 boxes that appear on the top right, that same screen. So I'm seeing what my manager has assigned me to, the columns, however they've displayed them. I can see, hey, he just added these 2 for me to prioritize today. Whatever the label is for these, you can make them your own. But that's the goal, is to have that two-way communication. Hey, I just finished that. As I drag it over, guess what? It marks the task complete. So that's an advantage of having that screen available to you, because it allows the users and you to have that same shared screen of what's going on. In this case, this assignment has a mixture of information. I can't really talk about that right now, but it's something that that's available for you to interact with. It is meant to be sort of, I guess it's a Kanban style type of managing the projects, a little more detailed there. And the goal with it, again, is that you're managing it, right? So the only thing that I haven't shown you, because we've talked about assignments, projects, templates, right? The only thing that I haven't talked about from this screen of setup is the ability to go and create those statuses. So as you can see here under the more option, there's an ability to edit assignment statuses. That's my table. And I can select which ones, what the names are, which one's the default, right? So does the default to work to be done? Here it is. And then as I move them, what percentage complete percentage will they have? So again, I still go back to what I said a moment ago, which was we still rely on you either doing percentages or you're doing time. The only time that it really does both is when you're done with the task, then it will just sort of mark it at 100%. I just have an example of 50 just because I was trying to show it in my sandbox, I think, for a client. But the idea here is that once it updates it to 50%, it doesn't go back. It doesn't update again. It's a one time, right? So just being aware of that. Um, but the idea is here that I'm able to see how my team is doing for that week, what's assigned to them. These blocks are Monday through Friday. You can see the blocked out day that I added for Thursday. You can see all the things that I'm assigned to for a certain period of time. And then just like with the staff schedule, on this left side are the cards of work that has not been assigned yet. So I can filter or search for that here with the pencil icon. Like I said, I've kept it simple, so it's just showing the ones for the webinar. And then I'm obviously able to select the people that I'm selecting or to display here, the users' names or any other filter that I have available here for me to see it. Okay, so let's take some questions on that. The halfway down column. So for the 50% one, I went into that backend where I clicked on more. This question is from Isabel. I clicked on edit assignment statuses, and the halfway done, I did at 50%. Again, it was just a way to say when I drag it to that column, mark it at 50. But once it's marked 50, it's not going to allow you to change it again by dragging. You would have to manually update that. But again, if you're entering time, I would not recommend to do anything more than the zeros or the 100, just because, again, it's one or the other. But I would have you talk to your account manager more to just make sure that it follows with your process. So, oh, great. And you said that I answered your question. All right, question from Amy. If we're not using Kanban and want to prioritize work for a creative, how does that show up on their dashboard? Great question. There is a priority field in tasks, so you can use that. I'll touch on that here quickly. Let me find my tab. So when I go to, and I'm just going to pick on any schedule here, so give me a moment. But there's a lot of information that I obviously can get into with tasks. But when I highlight a task, I can hide the Gantt chart by clicking on these blue buttons at the top. And instead, I can show more detail of what's going on in that task. And I can make sure that I'm looking at the task details. And there should be a field for me to select for priority. And I don't remember exactly where it is. So let me poke. Here we go. So you can select the priority on that task, and then what they can do from the end of the client, or excuse me, the creative, is that on their creative today page, um, whichever, and it's just usually the first two selections, the card view or the row view, besides the one that I just showed you new, you can choose to go, they'll have the option. All users will always have the ability to click on their own display options for their own screen, just for themselves, and they can sort and group. And depending on what's available here, I believe we have priority under one of these. Yeah, so there's priority. I don't use priority as much, but you'll see all of them default to medium. So it'll all fall under one category. But that's how I would explain it for that question. From Amy about how to set priorities and tasks. So, and Kel, let's see, am I answering all the questions? Yes. Okay. Just make sure. I think I answered all of them on that one. Let me make sure I have answered more on the other one. Oh, Amy asked on both sides. So, yes. So hopefully that helps. So that's those are the three tabs that we wanted to talk about. Again, if you need more training on them, please reach out to us, look at our guide. We do have videos on there from previous webinars that talk about it more, and or specific videos for those features. You just saw where you can go to our website and where you can find those or search for. The other last thing that I didn't have time to share with you is that underneath the project manager, there's a projects dashboard that defaults to the people who are signed in. So in this case, it links to the projects that I belong to as a team member. Just like I showed you in other screens, there's a more button. Individual users can filter, hey, not only show me those that I'm on the team of, but also show me the ones that I have open assignments from me, and then filter as I need to for the projects, right? This is projects, not tasks. So that's another good one that I usually show clients. Sometimes they'll say, how come I don't see all of the projects? Well, this was meant to just be your projects, but you can uncheck the box. The risk with that is now you're expanding the list if you've been with us for a long time, or if you're going to be with us for a long time, right? That list is going to get longer. That screen's going to run for a long, long time. So be careful. And then that also introduces me to talk about the ability to report. And I can't obviously go into another hour in reporting, but just so that you know, things like you can create is underneath the project manager icon, we have a hub for the Today project manager. And we have a lot of information that appears, again, linked to the person who signed in. So if you're a manager, there's things that it'll alert you on for you to look at and maybe ask your account manager as well as your internal team how to turn those on and what you should see and not see. But in this section on the left is also a mention of the reporting that we have available. And in specifically the assignments topic or category, I have created a few of these myself, but we default a one called due but not done. So unless your team went out and deleted it on purpose, we can reinstate it, but you should have the due but not done. This is an example, great example, where you can run a report, whether for one person like you see here, or just not worry about the filter, and just see the tasks that are assigned to people that they have not yet completed as of today. And that's something that you can run every day. These lists are great because we can show you how to create them. Not only that, they'll be able to be mass updated or reassigned from here. Hey, someone's out, Don's out. I need to update these and change them to Charlie. You saw how I was able to do that before. Select someone else, make those assignments, right? Or I can also click on the shortcuts that come from the project folder to go to those different sections of the project if I need to. So those nice shortcuts here. Otherwise, I can just go to the dashboard of the project by highlighting the underline there. or clicking on the underline there. So let's see here. I hope I answered all the questions. I'm trying to see if I'd have done so. But yeah, so it looks like I have. So yeah, again, thank you for your time. We have met the hour here, but if you have any other questions, please let me know. Thank you, Jessica, for your gratitude there, and for everyone also. Have a great day, and look out for our next one. All right, take care. Thanks, Rob.